elements list, templates, and profiles. There's different types of lists that we can create. We can create an accordion list. So when we hover over a certain element, well, it displays it in a bigger space. We can also create maybe a normal list where we're just displaying rows and columns of elements. We can also create elements lists that are thumbnails. So we can click on a thumbnail and view the image a little bit larger. So there's different types of lists that we can create. When we create a list, we need to take into account what's a profile, what's a template, and what's the element detail. So first of all, we're going to have different elements, and our elements are going to be in our family of content management, and they're going to have different bits of information. So here we have some elements with a class, with a name, but we could have more details like a number of views, creation date, publishing day, and all kinds of other fields. So based on these fields, we can create conditions. We already said that the main condition for the elements to be displayed is that in the field published, the value must be equal to yes. That would be the main condition, but additionally, we can create other conditions with profiles. So basically what we're going to do, we're going to create a profile, and in this profile, we're going to set up one or more conditions that the element must meet in order to be displayed in the list. For example, if we want the list to show only classic movies, we can create a profile that's based on a class that's called classic movies with this condition. And then once we've created this condition, we can apply the condition, we can apply this profile to the list. So in the configuration of our elements list, we can select profiles. Now, we can also create styles. Styles can be applied to many contents. For example, they can be applied to a text in the gallery, they can be applied to a title, to a button. So there's lots of different places where we can apply styles. This is something we're going to want to take into account because we can also apply styles to our element lists. This is going to define the look and feel of our element list. We can also define the pagination. The pagination is, do we want the users to be able to use infinite scrolling? So do we want to display everything on one unique page so they're always going to be scrolling down to access the contents? Or do we actually want to add scrolling? So maybe they can see, as we can see here, well, 1, 2, 3, 4 elements and only 3 rows. And if they want to see more elements, they have to click on the button next. Okay, so this would be an example of scrolling. This can also be defined for the elements lists. We also have to take into account the templates. So the templates are going to define what data is shown, and the style is going to define how that data appears. So once we create the template, it can be linked to a list. This way, the list will show the data as it was defined in the template. So here I can see I've created a template, and this template is being used in this list. So when we create a list, we can add profiles, styles, pagination, we can add templates, and we can add some other things. For example, we can add element details. What's an element detail? Well, what we're going to do, if we want to do it like this, we can click on a certain element, and by clicking on this element, it could take us to another page with additional information. And this page could contain more information of the record of this element here, or it could have additional information extracted from wherever. There's all kinds of other functionalities, but we're going to learn how to use these main features because this is basically what we're going to need in order to create an element list. Before we learn how to create these element lists, I'm going to show you some examples. I'm going to structure, and then we're going to open a page with a few examples. So this would be my page. If I click here on preview, we can see I've got several element lists. Here I've got an element list with some movies, and here I've got pagination, so I can go from one page to another. Besides, I can click on these movies and see additional information. For example, if I click here, it takes me to more information about this movie. Okay, down here I've got some other lists because we can set up our list in lots of different ways. Here I've got a list with movement, so I can click on these little buttons to go back and forward through the different elements. We can also see I've displayed some text on top of the image. So these are all things that we can do. We're going to learn how to use most of these features now. So here I've got another one. This one has a different effect. It's a faded carousel. Afterwards, here we have a marquee. Basically, this is also extracting data from my family of content management, but the only thing we're displaying is the image. And besides, we're not even adding an element detail. So usually what we do is we'd allow the user to click on the image and it would take them to more details. But anyways, here we haven't done that. And here we have some other options, for example, like a carousel, where I can go back and forth to the different images and see them here. And here I've got an accordion view. So we can also do this. So as you can see, there's all kinds of different options that we can use in our elements list. We're going to learn how to create an element list now. The first thing I'm going to do is open a page, and I'm going to go to the layout view. And I'm going to select, for example, this space here. I'm going to say I want the height to be by content, or maybe I could even indicate the size here. Let me just add the size here for now. I'll save, and here I should add the content. We want to select an element list. Now, once we've selected an element list, I need to create one from scratch or select an existing one. In order to do that, I'll click here. I'll select an existing one, or I'll create a new one. I'm just going to create one from scratch. So I'll click on create. I'm going to call it demo. And now we have to create a template. In order to create a template, I'm going to click here, select an existing template or create a new one. So I'm going to create one from scratch. I'm going to click here on create. I'm going to give it a name, demo template. And once I save it, I'm going to create a space, for example, poster. I'm going to call it poster, and the size is going to be maybe 200, and the height is going to be 185. Okay, and here we're going to add fields. We're going to map fields from our record of content management to this template. So I'm going to click here on add fields, and I'm going to add, for example, I have this field, it's a multimedia field, it's called poster. I'm going to select this one. Now, I know this one has an image in it. This would be the size it has. If I don't like it, I can always adjust it later. So I'm going to save and exit. I'll just keep it quite simple. For now, I'm just going to do this. I'll select the template I just created. So now, my element list, the one I just created, already has a template. Now we can also select a profile, so it only displays certain movies. How do I create a profile? I enter here, I click on create profile, and here I give it a name. And when I continue, I can set up the conditions. I can set up the conditions based on any field I want. So I can click here on create condition. I can select a field, for example. We already know the published field is requested in order for the elements to be displayed, but I could say, well, I want the price to be greater than or equal to, and then I could set up here a certain price. Anyways, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to set up any condition. That means I'm going to display all of the different elements that I have in my content management family. So I don't want any profile. I'm not going to set up a profile. I'm just going to exit. Actually, I've created it here. If I want, I could delete it. I'm just going to leave it like that, empty. So I'm not going to apply any profile. I'm not going to order by anything. I'm just going to leave all of this how it is by default. The last thing I want to do, let me see here. I'm going to say I do want it with pagination. So I do want these options to, move through the different pages. I'm just going to leave all of this by default for now, as it is. Okay, we're going to save and exit and see what happens. So I have my template. I save and exit. I'm sure this isn't going to look very good, but I'm going to preview. And this is the result. Okay. For me, it's actually too small. I would actually like to modify this a little bit. This is just a demo, so we're going to try to make this a little bit nicer, but I'm not going to invest too much time. But I do want to show you guys some of the options that we have here. So first of all, I'm going to modify the template. So I'm going to enter the element detail. I'm going to go to the template and I'm going to say, well, I don't want this to be 185. I want it to be 285. I'll save and exit. And then I'll go back to the preview. I can update and I can see the result. Okay, so now it's occupying a bit more space. Besides, when I click here on the poster, we've got an option down here where I have my field, where I have the style. If I enter the style here, I can indicate the dimensions of the image. It can always be the same as this space here. So if I say I want this to be 200 and this I want it to be 285, it's going to occupy the entire space. So once we've done this, if I go and see the preview, we're going to see the images are going to be much larger. There we go. But now I want some space below them. So I'm going to the template and I'm going to add, I'll create a new section below. There we go. And I want this section to be a little bit smaller because all I want it to have is some blank space. So I'll say, okay, the height is going to be 40 pixels. I'll save and exit. Okay, here we're going to update. So now we've got a bit more space here. Now, we only have one column of data. I want several columns of data. I want to fill in this entire space here. I know I've got all these bright, ugly colors, but I'm doing this so you guys can very easily identify where I'm working and what I'm doing. So I'm going to go back to the configuration, not of the template, but of the entire list. And here, in the configuration of the list, I'm going to say, I want, for example, 5 elements per line, and I want 3 lines of data. So I'll save and exit. So basically what I'm doing is I'm creating a grid. I go back to the preview, and now I can see the result. Obviously, the size of the page, it's a little bit too small. It's not displaying all the content correctly. Besides, I could also indicate that I want this page to be responsive. So I could go back here. I could say, well, I want this to be responsive. So I'm going to select this option here. And I'm going to do the same thing with this option up here. So I'm going to say everything is responsive. Now this is occupying 100%. Let me update. And there we go. So here I can see the result. And besides, we can see, since it's responsive, the gaps in between, they're actually changing. Now, obviously I don't want these gaps to be red. I don't like the colors. I don't like the shadows and everything, but I'm just going to keep it this way so we can see very clearly what I'm doing. The next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to enter here the configuration, and I'm going to change the section. I'm going to say I want it to be by content. So I'll save and exit. Then I'll go back to the preview window and I'll update. And now we can see the content is going to be pushing downwards. Okay, here we said we wanted 3 rows of data. Well, it's showing us some pagination underneath after those 3 rows. If I want, I can modify the design of this pagination by selecting the options here in the configuration of the element list. So I'll go to the element list, and here I can modify the buttons to go backwards, forward. The position, I can put it upward, downward. I can align it to the center, to the left, and so on. I can also change this. I can say, well, instead of with pagination, I want it to be without pagination. I'll save and exit. And now we can see that's disappeared. Here we're just showing the image, the poster of the movie. But let's say we also want to add something else. We want to add maybe some text, like the name. So I'll go back to the template because this is something we're going to change here in the template. And in this space here, I'm going to add the name. So I'll click on Add Fields, and I'll say I want to add the name. I might also want to add a description. So I'm going to select a multiple line text here. There we go. Better yet, this one here. Okay, so I'm adding 2 fields. I'll set the selection. And now I'm going to save and exit. We have to take into account that here there might be a lot of text. So once I save and exit, let's see what happens. Okay, we're not actually seeing anything. Maybe we don't have enough space to see these contents, so I might have to change something here. Okay, I'm going to say I want the height to be by content. I'm going to enter the style. I'm going to make sure I've got everything right here. For example, this text, I want it to be size 11. I want the color to be black, for example. I'll save and exit. And down here, I've got the description. I'll change the style. I say I want this to start in a new line. And I want this also to be maybe a dark gray, size 11. I'll save and exit. Okay, so now I've got the name, the description, size by content. I'll save and exit, and let's see if this does a trick. There we go. So in this space here, we're going to have the text of the title. We're going to have the description. But let's say I don't really like this. It's too much text. I want it to appear a little bit smaller, or maybe only once someone clicks on the movie, I want to take them to the details with all the text. So I can always limit the amount of text that appears. I can enter here to the style. Maximum number of words, I'll say 5. Okay. Now I'm also going to say here in the style of the one-line text field, I want this to be bold and I want it to be 14. Besides, I also want a maximum of 4 words. Okay, I'll save and exit. And I'll go back to the preview. And there we go. We can see the titles. And after part of the text, we've got, like these 3 dots indicating that there's more text, but we can't really see it. Obviously, now we'd have to style this a little bit better. We'd have to change maybe the gaps or maybe the amount of elements that are going to appear. I'm going to modify a couple things just so it looks a little bit better. So first of all, I'm going to the element list here. Okay, this is by content. That's okay. Okay, I'll just leave it as it is. It's not very relevant. I'll change something else. For example, I'll change here in the element list. I'll say I want 6 or let's say 7 elements per line. What else? I'm also going to change the background. I don't like the background color. So I'll click here. I'll take off the background color, or I'll set it to be white. Okay. Now, well, I think that this is enough. I'll just update. There we go. So now it looks a little bit better. This looks a little bit more professional. Maybe the text is way too big or whatever. But we can always make these adjustments. So we can see this is actually quite easy, quite straightforward. All we have to do is enter the configuration, start modifying our page to look however we want, and work with it and style it until we have the correct look and feel that we're looking for. Now that we've seen the result, I'm going to add a profile so we can see what happens when I limit the amount of content that's going to appear here. So I'm going back to the editing view. I'm going to click here. It takes me to the addition of this list. And now I can go here to profile and I can say, well, I only want to display the cartoons, so the animations. I'll save and exit. And now we can see we're not seeing all the movies, only the animations. If I want to go to the template and I want to modify, for example, the style of this text here, maybe 14 is too big. I'll just leave in 11. We go back to the list and here we can see the result. So once we have the look and feel we want, we can continue with the rest of the details. For example, adding the details of each one of these movies. So when we click on it, we can access to more information. So we're going to learn how to do that later during this course.